Last night at my sister's extravagant party, I thought I'd finally been invited to belong. But then came the text from my father. "Leave now. Don't look at them. Don't speak." I walked out, humiliated and shaking, having no idea what they were hiding or why they needed me gone so badly. By morning, the police were at their door, my mother was screaming, and I was smiling. Because for once, I wasn't powerless. I had every word recorded. Before we dive in, tell me, what time are you listening to this, and where are you? Drop a comment below. I want to know. The heat clung to me like a second skin as I stepped out of my car, the kind of sticky summer evening Charleston is known for. The valet gave me a practiced smile, one I could tell he'd been flashing at every guest who arrived for my mother's big night. I adjusted my dress, smoothed my hair, and told myself to breathe. I wasn't here to make a scene. I was here because, maybe, just maybe, this time would feel different. Inside, the air conditioning greeted me with a blast, along with the muted hum of polite conversation and the low notes of a jazz quartet tucked in the corner. Crystal chandeliers reflected off the polished wood floors, and every table was draped in white linens, folded napkins perched like little sculptures. It was all so blithe. My mother had always loved grandeur that could double as a performance. I paused in the doorway, scanning the room. Ophelia, my older sister, stood near the bar, glowing in a floor-length emerald dress. Her hair fell in perfect waves, the kind of effortless look that takes hours of effort. People surrounded her, laughing a little too loudly at whatever story she was telling. She belonged here, basking in the attention, while I hovered by the entrance like a guest who'd gotten lost. I tugged the invitation out of my clutch, even though I didn't need it anymore. My name, Kaylin, had been added by hand at the bottom of a pre-printed card. It was written in my mother's perfect cursive, but small and crammed, like she'd realized at the last minute that her youngest daughter should probably be included. An afterthought. "Miss Kaylin?" A server appeared, clipboard in hand. "Your table is this way." He led me across the room, weaving between clusters of well-dressed people who barely noticed me. I caught a glimpse of my mother, blithe, floating from guest to guest, kissing cheeks and clasping hands like royalty greeting loyal subjects. She spotted me briefly, offering a quick, rehearsed smile before turning back to a woman complimenting her earrings. My table was near the back, practically in the kitchen. From where I sat, I could see the servers coming and going, balancing trays of wine and hors d'oeuvres. The hum of conversation from the main room felt distant, like I'd been deliberately placed in the periphery. The server gave me a sympathetic glance before walking away. That small look said everything. They knew. Everyone always knew. I sat down, pressing my palms to my lap. The empty chair beside me stayed empty for what felt like forever. Eventually, Ophelia drifted over, giving me one of those hugs that barely qualify as contact. "Thanks for showing up," she murmured. "Don't make it about you tonight, okay?" "I wasn't planning to," I said, but she was already walking away, her perfume lingering like a reminder of where I stood in this family, visible, but only when convenient. My mother stopped by next, all painted on warmth. "Glad you made it, darling," she said, touching my shoulder lightly. "Don't wander too far." And then she was gone, like she'd checked something off her to-do list. I stared at the wine glass in front of me, the deep red catching the light. I hadn't had a drink in years. It wasn't worth explaining why, not here, not tonight. I pushed it aside, untouched. I leaned back, watching my family work the room, thinking about how many times I'd told myself I was used to this, used to being the one pushed to the edges. But tonight, for some reason, it stung differently. I wasn't sure why I came. Maybe I just wanted, for once, to feel like I belonged. And that's when I heard the first words that would change everything. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank someone very special." The room fell quiet as the spotlight moved toward the small stage at the front. I could barely see through the sea of perfectly dressed guests craning their necks. The clinking of glasses faded as my mother, glowing in her sequined gown, glided up the steps like she'd been preparing for this moment all her life. The quartet shifted into a soft background melody, dramatic enough to make her entrance feel like a coronation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Blythe began, her voice confident, perfectly pitched to carry across the room. "Thank you for being here tonight to celebrate not just this beautiful evening, but the extraordinary people who make this family what it is." I leaned forward slightly in my chair, palms flat against the tablecloth. For a moment, I let myself imagine she meant me, that tonight she might actually see me. She didn't. Ophelia, she continued, pausing just long enough for dramatic effect. My darling girl, you are the heart of this family. Your sacrifices, your tireless commitment to carrying on our legacy, you are everything we could have hoped for in a daughter. The crowd erupted in applause. People whistled. Some even stood to clap. I stayed seated, frozen, my nails digging into my palms under the table. Not a word about me. I glanced at a middle-aged man next to me, some guest of a guest, who turned and asked casually, "Which one are you? The pretty one or the smart one?" I forced a polite smile. "I'm just Kaylin," I said, though my throat tightened on the words. The speech went on, a love letter to Ophelia dressed up as a toast. "She is our future," Blythe declared proudly. "Her achievements are a testament to this family's values. We are all so proud of her." I couldn't help but glance toward my sister. Ophelia beamed, soaking in the praise, nodding as though humility was beneath her, but she'd try to feign it anyway. She caught my eye for a split second, then looked away. When the applause finally died down, my father walked up. Arden always looked slightly out of place at these events, like he'd rather be anywhere else. But tonight there was an unusual energy in his movements. He adjusted the microphone and cleared his throat. "And, well," he began, voice a little shaky, "I have a special announcement." The room hushed again. "Ophelia," he said, turning toward her with a smile I couldn't remember ever seeing directed at me, "it's time you take ownership of what you've earned. As of tonight, the Hilton Head property is officially yours. You've always treated it like a second home. Now it truly is." The words hit me like a slap. I sat there, stunned, as the guests erupted again, clapping and murmuring congratulations. I could hear snippets. "That's so generous. She really deserves it. Didn't Kaylin used to handle that place?" Yes, I had. I'd spent years keeping that house alive, paying for repairs when my parents didn't want to, cleaning up after holiday weekends everyone else abandoned, making sure it didn't fall apart when no one else cared. And now, just like that, it was gone. Handed over as if my work had been invisible. My jaw ached from clenching it. I pushed my chair back slowly, careful not to draw attention, and whispered to the stranger beside me, "Excuse me." The hallway outside the banquet room was blissfully empty. I walked toward the restroom but didn't go in, stopping instead near a large mirror by the coat check. I gripped the edge of the counter, my hands trembling. Why do I keep expecting them to see me? I took a breath, then another, but it didn't help. My chest felt tight, like the walls themselves were closing in. That's when my phone buzzed in my clutch. A text from an unknown number. "Leave. Now. Don't look at them. Don't speak." My hand trembled as I held the phone, staring at the words that glared back at me. "Leave. Now. Don't look at them. Don't speak." For a few seconds, I couldn't even breathe. I could still hear the laughter and music seeping through the walls from the ballroom, a stark contrast to the knot of dread twisting in my stomach. It felt like I was watching my own life from a distance, the room spinning slightly as if my body already knew what my mind hadn't processed. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to focus. Who would send me that? And why now? I glanced back toward the ballroom doors. Through the gap, I could see Ophelia laughing with a group of guests, my mother's hand elegantly perched on a glass of champagne as she held court near the stage. They were radiant, unbothered. No one in that room looked like they'd just sent me a message that sounded like a threat or a warning. I tightened my grip on the phone and, without overthinking it, pressed the number to call back. It rang twice before a voice I hadn't expected to hear picked up. "Kaylin." My father's voice came through, low and strained, like he was hiding somewhere he wasn't supposed to be. "Dad?" I whispered, stepping further into the empty corridor, instinctively moving away from the noise. "What's going on? Why are you telling me to leave?" "Just do as I say," he hissed, his tone unlike anything I'd ever heard from him. My father was usually measured, distant even, but this was different. This was fear. "Don't drink anything. Don't sign anything. Get your things and go. Quietly." My pulse thudded in my ears. "What are you talking about? Did something happen? Are you okay?" "I can't explain now," he said, cutting me off. "Just leave. Please." "Dad, you can't just—" But the line went dead. He hung up. I stood there, the phone still pressed to my ear, frozen. The message, his tone, the urgency. It didn't feel like paranoia. It felt real. I shoved the phone back into my clutch, trying to calm my breathing. My heels clicked softly against the marble floor as I started to move, unsure of where to go next. I thought about leaving through the side exit, just walking away from the whole event, but something stopped me. That's when I heard her voice. I froze mid-step, pressing myself against the wall as I realized Ophelia was just around the corner. Her polished, confident tone was quieter now, but still dripping with that superiority she wore like a designer dress. "She won't fight it," she said. "She never does. Just make sure the paperwork clears tonight." Paperwork? My heart pounded harder. A man's voice responded, muffled and indistinct, but I could make out the words transfer and accounts. I leaned closer, my breath shallow, straining to catch every word. "Don't worry about her," Ophelia continued. "Kaylin doesn't even know what's coming. She'll be out of the way before she figures it out." It felt like my blood turned cold. My sister, my own sister, was talking about me, about pushing me out of something I didn't even know I was part of. I backed away slowly, careful not to make a sound. I didn't even know where I was going, but I couldn't stand there listening to more. I made my way back toward the hallway by the restrooms, the farthest point from the ballroom where I could still breathe. My mind raced. How much had they planned behind my back? What paperwork? What closing out did she mean? Leaning against the wall, I stared at my reflection in the ornate mirror. My face looked pale, almost unrecognizable under the soft hallway lights. "Why do I keep coming back?" I whispered to myself. "Why do I still expect them to treat me like I matter?" It hit me then. Whatever this was, it had been in motion for a while. This wasn't just a spontaneous insult or a forgotten mention in a speech. This was bigger. And my father, of all people, had told me to get out. I pressed my palms against the cool marble wall, steadying myself. Leaving now would mean walking away without answers, but staying. Staying might mean playing into whatever trap they'd set. I didn't know what they were planning, but I knew one thing. I couldn't stay here. I walked quickly, my heels barely touching the ground, as if I could outrun the stares and whispers I imagined trailing behind me. No one stopped me. No one called my name. Maybe they didn't even notice I was gone. The hallway's golden light faded into the cooler air of the parking lot, and when I stepped outside, the night hit me like a slap. Humid, heavy, and still. My car sat under a street lamp at the far end of the lot, a lone outlier among the rows of polished luxury vehicles lined up like soldiers for my family's grand event. Once inside, I shut the door and locked it, exhaling a shaky breath. The muffled roar of laughter and music carried through the brick walls of the hall, but here in my car, it felt like I'd entered another world. Silent, suffocating, but mine. I let my hands rest on the steering wheel, staring blankly at my reflection in the rearview mirror. Arden's words still looped in my head like a siren. "Don't drink anything. Don't sign anything. Just leave." But leave, just walk away, that's what I always did, wasn't it? It was what they counted on me to do. My phone lit up on the passenger seat. I picked it up, staring at the screen, my fingers twitching with a need I couldn't name. Control, answers, maybe both. For years I'd been kept at arm's length, told just enough to make me feel included, but never enough to truly belong. But tonight, I wasn't going to stay in the dark. I unlocked my phone and, with practiced fingers, opened the app that linked to our family's shared cloud account. It was meant for photos, for coordinating maintenance on properties, for taxes, mundane things that made us look like a functioning family on paper. But I knew its real value. It was where my parents stored anything they wanted all of us to access, and a lot they probably assumed I wouldn't dare look at. I scrolled past the smiling photos of Ophelia in her gowns, the perfect family portraits I hadn't been invited to join, and found a folder buried near the bottom. Legal, pending. My heart picked up speed. I tapped it. Documents appeared. Transfer, final. Settlement, draft. Revised trust agreement. My stomach twisted as I opened the first one. Pages of legal jargon filled the screen, but the words that mattered jumped out in bold. Transfer of ownership, primary beneficiary. Ophelia Vaughn. My sister's name, over and over again. I swiped to the next file, fingers shaking. It was an email chain. My mother, Ophelia, and a lawyer I didn't recognize. Kaylin doesn't need to be involved. She's been distant for years. Let's not complicate this. She'll stay quiet if we don't provoke her. I blinked hard, like I could erase the words if I tried hard enough. They weren't just transferring the Hilton Head property, they were moving assets from another trust, one I didn't even know existed. My name was nowhere in these documents, though I had spent years helping manage the vacation home, covering costs when no one else wanted to, quietly taking responsibility because I thought it mattered. A fresh wave of humiliation burned my chest. All this time I thought my distance from them had been my choice. But this was them rewriting the family without me in it. I leaned back against the headrest, staring at the ceiling of my car as I tried to quiet the chaos in my head. They think I won't fight. They think I'll just swallow it like I always do. Not this time. I sat up straighter, my resolve hardening with each breath. I took screenshots of every email, every document, saving them to a hidden folder on my phone. Then I opened my voice recorder and started talking, my voice steady, though my hands still trembled. July 17th, 10:42 p.m., I said. Found evidence of property and trust transfers excluding me. Parties involved, Blythe Vaughn, Ophelia Vaughn, and an attorney named Daniel Klein. Arden Vaughn warned me to leave the event, saving all files for potential legal review. The words sounded clinical, almost detached, but they gave me something I hadn't had all night. A sense of control. I glanced at the glowing screen one more time before locking my phone and setting it back on the seat beside me. If they thought I'd stay quiet, they didn't know me anymore. And then I saw it. The date. Everything was set to finalize tomorrow morning. By the time I got back to my apartment, the sun hadn't even thought about rising. The streets were still quiet, the kind of silence that only exists in those strange hours between night and morning, when the world feels suspended. I carried my purse in like it weighed 100 pounds, dropped it by the door, and headed straight for the kitchen table. My laptop sat where I'd left it, and I opened it without turning on any lights. The glow of the screen lit up my small kitchen, reflecting off the stainless steel appliances I'd bought on sale when I first moved in here, trying to make this apartment feel like more than just a place I was hiding. I pulled the downloaded files from my phone onto the laptop, spreading everything out like puzzle pieces. Legal documents, email threads, screenshots. I scrolled through them until the words blurred, but I kept reading anyway. That's when I found it, a single clause buried deep in one of the settlement drafts. Beneficiary voluntarily relinquished her rights due to consistent non-participation in family activities and management decisions. My chest tightened. Voluntarily relinquished. They were rewriting my absence, my survival tactic, as consent. They weren't just excluding me. They were documenting it like I had agreed to disappear. I leaned back in the chair and let my head fall into my hands. I had spent years trying to play the role they gave me. The quiet one, the easy one, the one who didn't make a fuss. And they had turned that into their weapon. I shut my eyes and let myself feel the weight of it. For a moment, I thought, maybe I just let it go. Maybe if I walk away, this ends. Maybe the pain stops if I stop caring. I don't know how long I sat like that. Minutes, hours, just staring at the floor while the hum of my refrigerator filled the room. But then, my phone buzzed. It was Arden. They won't stop. You need to fight or walk away forever. I stared at the screen, rereading the message until it burned into me. Arden had always been quiet, distant, almost indifferent. But this wasn't indifference. This was a warning. If my father, who spent his life keeping the peace by saying nothing, was telling me to fight, then the danger was real. I opened my voice recorder again and pressed record. It's 4:28 a.m., I said quietly. My voice sounded foreign, like it belonged to someone older, someone who'd lived through a war. They've spent years erasing me. This isn't neglect. This is calculated, and now they're putting it on paper. My mind flashed back to a different kitchen table, years ago, when I was 17. Ophelia had been crying because she couldn't afford the fee for her school's senior trip to D.C. I'd spent the summer working double shifts at a coffee shop, saving for my first laptop, and without thinking, I handed her every dollar I had. It's okay, I'd told her. I can save up again next summer. She'd hugged me, promised she'd pay me back. She never did, and I never asked. That had been the pattern my whole life, me giving, them taking, and me convincing myself it was fine, because I didn't want to start a fight I couldn't win. But this wasn't about a few $100s or a forgotten thank you. This was my future, my rights, my name. I felt my anger start to crystallize into something sharper, resolve. I opened a blank document and began typing. A timeline. Every interaction, every transfer I'd just discovered, every screenshot and email, organized by date and context. I attached the files one by one, labeling them clearly. Then I created a voice memo narrating the evidence, explaining what I found and when I found it, in case I needed to hand it all over to someone who could actually help me. As I typed, I thought of Blythe's voice at the party, so smooth and confident as she praised Ophelia for her dedication. I thought of Ophelia's words on that phone call. She won't fight it. She never does. I tightened my jaw. They thought they knew me. They thought I'd stay in my little corner, quietly swallowing whatever scraps of dignity they threw my way. Not this time. I saved the file on multiple drives, uploaded it to a secure folder, and emailed myself copies. If they wanted to play games, I'd be ready. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I whispered to myself, if they want to fight, they'll get one, but on my terms. And just when I thought I'd figured out my next move, there was a knock at my door. The knock came again, louder this time. I stayed still for a moment, staring at the door like it might disappear if I wished hard enough. My mind raced through possibilities. Arden? The police? Someone who knew too much. I finally stood and opened it, keeping the chain on out of instinct. And there they were, Blythe and Ophelia. They looked like they'd walked straight out of last night's party. Perfect hair, immaculate makeup, clothes that screamed, "We are in control." Blythe was holding a small gift bag with gold tissue paper sticking out of the top, like this was some kind of casual drop-in. "Sweetie," Blythe cooed, her tone as syrupy as ever. "We didn't get a chance to really talk last night. May we come in?" Every fiber of me wanted to slam the door. Instead, I unlatched it and stepped aside. "Sure," I said flatly. "Why not?" They glided in like they owned the place, Ophelia trailing behind her, phone in hand. I noticed immediately how her thumb brushed the side button. Recording. I couldn't tell for sure, but I filed it away. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where, hours ago, I'd been piecing together their betrayal. Blythe set the bag between us like a peace offering, though we both knew that wasn't what this was. "I brought you something," she said, gesturing to the bag. "A little pick-me-up. You seemed off last night. We just wanted to check in." "Off," I repeated, my voice flat. Ophelia smirked like she'd caught the subtext. "Well, you were sitting in the back alone. People noticed." My jaw tightened. "I'm sure they did." Blythe waved her hand, dismissing the tension. "Let's not dwell on that. You remember our trips to Hilton Head, don't you? Those summers were magical. You always loved that place." It wasn't reminiscing. It was theater. I caught movement out of the corner of my eye. Ophelia placing her phone, face down, on the table. Recording. Definitely recording. "So," I said, leaning back in my chair, "is this a family reunion? Or are we going to skip to the part where you tell me why you're really here?" Blythe's smile faltered just slightly, then returned, sharper. She leaned in, lowering her voice. "Kaylin, I want you to understand something. Sometimes silence is worth more than anything you think you're owed. It's better for everyone if you stay quiet. You don't want this to get messy." The words landed like a slap. My heart pounded, but I kept my face calm. Ophelia chimed in, casual as ever. "She's right. You know how these things go. It's all just business. No need to make it bigger than it is." Business. They were talking about dismantling my life like it was a spreadsheet. I stared at them, my hands folded tightly in my lap so they wouldn't see the tremor. Inside, I was screaming, but I'd learned long ago how to wear my silence like armor. "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" I said quietly. Blythe tilted her head, trying to read me. "We're just trying to do what's best for the family." Family. The word had never sounded so empty. I gave them nothing else. Short, polite answers. I let them talk, let them believe they were still in control, while every word they spoke was etching my next move deeper into stone. After a few more minutes of fake warmth and thinly veiled threats, they stood to leave. Blythe kissed my cheek like we hadn't just danced around a war declaration. "Think about what I said, sweetie. It really is better for everyone." I closed the door behind them and leaned against it, exhaling the breath I'd been holding. Then I walked straight to my laptop. And that's when I saw it. Something in the documents I hadn't noticed before. As soon as the door clicked shut behind them, I felt the air in my apartment shift. I didn't just need space to breathe anymore. I needed to act. I moved quickly, like if I stopped moving, I'd shatter. My laptop was still on the table from earlier, its soft hum waiting for me. I pulled it toward me and opened the folder of files I had downloaded the night before. The same documents stared back at me, pages and pages of carefully crafted legalese designed to intimidate anyone who wasn't a lawyer. But now I wasn't skimming, I was dissecting. Every word, every comma, every clause. And that's when I saw it. An addendum, buried in the trust documents, plain, black text that they clearly thought I'd never read. My eyes traced the words. No transfer or modification of trust assets shall be valid without the explicit, unanimous written consent of all beneficiaries. I sat back in my chair, my mouth slightly open. My consent. They needed me. They thought I wouldn't read the fine print, I whispered to myself. That's their mistake. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something other than despair. It wasn't joy, not even close, but a spark. A crack in their wall of control. I opened my notes app and started typing, outlining what I'd found, copying the exact language of the clause. If they wanted to bulldoze me out of this family, they'd failed. Legally, everything they had done was void without me. My phone buzzed, pulling me out of my focus. A voicemail. Arden. My finger hovered over the play button. My father never called me unless it was serious. I put it on speaker, bracing myself. Kaylin. His voice was low, heavy, like he'd waited until no one could hear him. They're preparing to paint you as unstable. You need to get ahead of this. It's the only way you'll survive what's coming. I froze. Unstable. The word echoed in my head, acidic and sharp. That's what this was about. Not just cutting me out financially, they wanted to destroy me, my credibility, my voice, everything. My hands curled into fists on the table. This wasn't just about property or bank accounts. They were rewriting my identity, turning me into the family problem. The broken one. They've been doing this my whole life, I said out loud, the words surprising me with their rawness. And I let them. I saw flashes of myself as a child, swallowing every insult, every backhanded comment. I saw teenage me handing over my summer job money so Ophelia could go on some expensive school trip, telling myself, it's fine. She needs it more than I do. I saw every holiday where I bit my tongue instead of calling out their cruelty. They counted on me to stay quiet, to keep being the easy one. I stared at the documents spread out across the table, the sunlight streaming through my blinds, now glaring, unforgiving. Not anymore, I said. I grabbed my phone and started organizing everything. Screenshots, the emails, that sickly sweet threat Blythe had given me at my own kitchen table. I added timestamps, grouped them by relevance, turned my cluttered desktop into a weapon. Then I opened my contacts and scrolled to a name I'd gotten from a coworker months ago, an attorney who specialized in family trusts. I hit call before I could talk myself out of it. Hi, this is Kaylin. I'd like to schedule a consultation, I said when the receptionist answered. My voice sounded steady, even to me. When I hung up, I started a voice memo, narrating everything I'd uncovered. Not for them, for me. So I could hear myself say it out loud, so I could own it. They wanted quiet Kaylin, I said into the recorder. They're about to meet the version of me they never imagined. I closed my laptop, only when the screen blurred from staring too long. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting. I was building. That night, as the sky outside turned the color of deep steel, I drafted one last email, laying out every fact, every document, every threat. I scheduled it to send at 8 a.m. sharp. By then, the game would change forever. The night barely gave me rest. My mind was a carousel of plans and possibilities, each one colliding with the next. By morning, I was running on coffee and adrenaline, watching the clock inch toward my appointment downtown. The law office was sleek, glass walls and polished wood, the kind of place where you knew every second of someone's time cost more than you wanted to imagine. I sat across from Mr. Harris, the attorney my coworker had recommended, sliding a neatly organized folder across his desk. I've documented everything, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Emails, recordings, the trust documents. I need to know what I'm standing on. He flipped through the pages with a practiced eye, nodding occasionally, making notes with a quiet hum. After several minutes, he looked up. They can't do this without you. That clause you found, unanimous consent. It makes their transfers invalid. It felt like a stone lifting off my chest. So all of this, it's illegal? Not just illegal, he said, his tone sharpening. If you can prove those threats you mentioned, we're talking coercion. That opens a whole other door. They don't just lose if you fight this. They could face criminal exposure. For a moment, I didn't breathe. Criminal exposure. Words I never thought I'd hear connected to my mother and sister. What do I do next? I asked. File an injunction, he said without hesitation. We freeze everything before they can push through any more transfers. Preserve every piece of evidence. And Kaylin? He leaned forward. Don't engage with them directly. Let me handle all communication from here on. I nodded, gripping the edge of my chair until my knuckles whitened. This wasn't a family argument anymore. This was a war. When I left his office, the city felt louder than before, cars rushing past, people laughing on the sidewalks. I didn't feel part of it. I was carrying too much. By the time I got back to my apartment, I thought I'd finally breathe, but my inbox told another story. A new email sat at the top, from a law firm I didn't recognize. I clicked it, and my stomach dropped. They'd filed a petition, Blythe and Ophelia, declaring me mentally unfit to make financial decisions, requesting emergency control over my assets. I could barely read past the first paragraph, the words blurring together. Unstable, reckless, emotionally incapable. They didn't even wait, I whispered to myself. They want me erased, officially and permanently. My heart pounded in my ears as I set my laptop aside and grabbed my phone. I opened my voice recorder, pressed record, and started speaking, my words sharp, deliberate. To Blythe and Ophelia, I began, my voice steady, though my hands trembled. I know what you're doing. I know what you've taken, and I know you think you can make me disappear. But I am not the girl who stayed silent anymore. I stopped the recording and immediately uploaded it to my secured drive, adding it to the growing file of evidence. Then I drafted a new email, attaching everything. Emails, screenshots, even the veiled threat Blythe had given me in my kitchen, and addressed it to Mr. Harris. I CC'd Arden. And then, almost as an afterthought, I added one more recipient. The authorities. If they wanted to scare me into silence, they needed to know I'd scorched the earth first. Later, as the sun dipped low, I found myself staring at an old photo on my fridge. Me, maybe 12 years old, standing barefoot in the grass at Hilton Head, smiling like I belonged there, like I mattered. This is the girl you thought would stay quiet forever, I said softly. She deserves justice. At exactly 8:00 a.m., my email went out. To everyone who could end this once and for all. By the time the courthouse came into view, my heart felt like it had run a marathon. I'd been up since dawn, replaying everything in my mind, the threats, the emails, the way Blythe smiled at me like a snake offering comfort before a strike. Now, it was all coming to a head. Mr. Harris met me at the entrance, crisp in his suit, carrying a folder thick enough to choke a printer. Everything's filed, he said as we walked in. The injunction is solid. They won't be able to touch a thing until the judge rules. Inside the courtroom, the air was cold and sterile, but the weight of what was about to happen made it feel suffocating. Across the aisle, Blythe and Ophelia sat together, perfectly coiffed, their expressions a careful blend of concern and indignation. If you didn't know better, you'd think they were the ones under attack. When the session began, Harris took the floor, laying out every piece of evidence, the recorded conversations, the emails between them, and the lawyer plotting to erase me, Arden's affidavit detailing their scheme. He moved methodically, like he was disassembling their entire house of cards brick by brick. Blythe tried to interrupt. Your Honor, this is being twisted. She's always been... The judge held up a hand, silencing her. Mrs. Beaumont, you will speak when it's your turn. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The recordings did it for me. Blythe's own voice, dripping with that condescending tone I knew too well. Sometimes silence is worth more than anything you think you're owed. Ophelia's casual cruelty in the background, laughing like they were already counting the spoils. By the time Harris finished, the courtroom was silent except for the scratching of the judge's pen. She finally looked up, her expression unflinching. Mrs. Beaumont, Ms. Beaumont, she said, her voice slicing through the room. The evidence presented shows a deliberate and egregious attempt to manipulate both legal and familial boundaries. This court does not tolerate such behavior. Your petition is denied, effective immediately. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter for review regarding potential criminal charges. Blythe's face barely twitched, but I saw her grip the edge of the table so tightly her knuckles blanched. Ophelia just stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. It was over. Back at my apartment, the afternoon sunlight poured through the open blinds, turning the room golden. My kitchen table was still covered in the papers that had once felt like chains, but now looked like proof of my freedom. Harris had called after the hearing to confirm I regained full control of all assets, including Hilton Head. They'd been ordered to cover my legal fees and were bound by a no-contact agreement. I sat for a long time, staring at the old photo of 12-year-old me on the fridge, barefoot in the Hilton Head grass, grinning like she belonged somewhere. I pulled it off the magnet and held it for a moment. That girl had spent her whole life trying to earn a place in their story. I opened the trash folder on my phone and deleted the photo. They can keep their narrative, I whispered. I have my freedom. Before bed, I played Arden's old voicemail one last time. They won't stop. You need to fight or walk away forever. This time I didn't feel fear. I felt gratitude. It had pushed me here, to reclaim my voice. Sometimes the only way to be heard is to let your silence speak for you, and make sure the right people are listening.